The Paranormal Chronicles Network presents the Event Horizon Show with your host, Dave Dominguez.
Greetings and welcome to the Event Horizon Show. I'm your host, Dave Dominguez. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to be here, and thanks to my good friend, mentor, and host of the ParanormalChronicles.com, Mr. G.L. Davies, for the opportunity to bring you the Event Horizon Show. As many of you are aware, the ParanormalChronicles.com presents a channel dedicated to all paranormal subjects. Podcast and video content produced and hosted by some of the world's leading experts in the paranormal. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the ParanormalChronicle.com, also known as TPCN, and never miss an episode. We welcome all participation and your comments and views on our show's topics or pretty much any other topic on the paranormal. Join us on our exploration of the unknown. And today we have a very special guest. We have Julia Brown, who's the general manager of History and Ghost Tours of Old Town Albuquerque, New Mexico. And Julia thrives on recounting the tales of miscellaneous trivia acquired during her journeys. Julia arrived in Albuquerque in February 1997 from Seattle, Washington, and has embraced the unique lifestyle of the Land of Enchantment. Julia thrilled guest as a volunteer with the Albuquerque Museum of Art and History for 7 years. Well known as the Ghost Lady, Julia has been guiding Old Town tours since February of 2002, and Julia also enjoys helping visitors to discover and experience both the past, history, and current vitality of Old Town, New Mexico. Welcome, Julia.
Hello, how are you?
We're doing very, very well. Thank you very much for joining us. Old Town, that's a beautiful part. It's like in central Albuquerque. Right.
Correct. Old Town is actually the birthplace of Albuquerque. It's where Albuquerque was founded in 1706. So, for 300 plus years, people have lived and died around the Old Town Plaza. It's really close at the intersection of what we call the Big I, where the two freeways in New Mexico meet, Interstate 40 and Interstate 25. Old Town is right by there.
It has a lot of buildings, and according to your brochure, dark alleys and concealed, long-forgotten areas. They've had battles there, murders, hangings, and a hidden cemetery.
Correct. There were actually two cemeteries in historic Old Town Albuquerque. That you won't find those on the current tourist maps at all. So Albuquerque was founded in 1706. Our oldest headstone in our oldest cemetery, which is Mount Calvary National Cemetery, is dated 1874.
Wow, 1874. That's the oldest headstone.
Correct,
okay.
Although Albuquerque was founded in 1706.
Oh, okay. And that was founded, I guess, by the Spaniards.
Correct.
Spanish missionaries.
Yeah, we were a Spanish. Cuervo y Valdez was an interim governor for this territory, and he wanted to become a permanent governor. So he thought that if he formed a villa, which is actually like a place of government, that he'd get to stick around here and get rich and stay here. So he founded the Villa of Albuquerque in 1706.
Okay, and that became the hub and became Old Town?
Correct. Well, you figure if you have an old town somewhere, it's usually because you have a new town somewhere else. Many places have old towns. Old Town San Diego, Old Town Tucson. For us, that happened when the railroad came through. Well, with the arrival of the railroad in 1880, they set up their hub about 1.5 miles to the east, and that is where Newtown sprang up. Of course, after Newtown, then the original area became known as Old Town. Today, Newtown is referred to as downtown, but Old Town is still the Old Town area.
Oh, okay. And when you do these tours, you do them nightly basis, or you have a schedule. They start nightly at 8 p.m.
Yeah, we've been doing the ghost tour every single night of the year. We've been doing the ghost tour for 17 years. Pretty much every night of the year, rain or shine, regardless of the weather. And it is a lot of fun. Some nights, very, very quiet. Other nights, we get a lot of activity. It really just depends. But it's a great way not only to see the historic area. A lot of the buildings are original adobe architecture, but to actually go into some of the nooks and crannies and see the little things and nuances that people don't notice during the day. The ambiance is totally different once the sun goes down.
Yeah, it changes everything. And mostly you get tourists. Do you get a lot of locals there from Albuquerque?
It just varies on the time of the year. Most of the year, we do get a lot of tourists. Of course, in October, Albuquerque has this huge event, the Albuquerque International Hot Air Balloon Fiesta, and you'll see the photos on TV with all the hundreds of hot air balloons. So we have that event in early October, and the city swells from a population of 600,000 to over 3 million people in those 9 days. And then after that, we go into Halloween, and Halloween is definitely when the locals are coming out looking for some spooky seasonal fun.
What's their reaction? Because I know in some of your tours, and on your website, you've posted pictures where there's anomalies, there's different things that come up in the photographs. And what's their reaction?
It really varies. Guests tend to have a pretty wide set of expectations when it comes to a ghost tour. I think it mainly depends on if they've ever attended a ghost tour before. You'd be surprised. We do actually get quite a few people who do believe that they are going to see a ghost during the tour. Unfortunately, that's very, very rare. Ghosts don't appear on demand. I can't schedule a time for them to appear. So, actually getting a full-on sighting is pretty rare. But many people do expect that they will see a ghost. A lot of other people, if they've never attended a ghost tour, they're really expecting a haunted house. They're expecting people to jump out at them, for people to scare them and scream at them, or for there to be staged setup things like holograms or people in costume or other things. They expect a haunted house. And our tour, where we're not a haunted house, no one's going to jump out, and scare you, or if they do, they're not with us. What we do is we tell a little bit of history of the Old Town area. We explain the ghost stories, of course, and then we show some of the paranormal evidence, the scientific evidence that has been collected over the last 17 years by the different ghost hunters and investigators who have actually researched the area.
So there's a lot of history there.
Exactly.
What are some of the ghost stories that you tell your guests?
There is a huge variety. There are so many ghost stories. We normally try and keep it to what we call our major ghost stories, and those are stories that have been reported more than once by more than one person that we have been able to collect scientific evidence of during our investigations. I have probably nearly 100 other individual stories, but these are things that only happened once, or only one person experienced them, or for whatever reason, when the ghost hunters were there, they didn't get any evidence. And the stories range from, murders to jilted lovers to, sick children who passed away. In Old Town, it seems to actually be the locations that the ghosts are affiliated with. Not necessarily that they died there, but they had something significant with that building. They don't wander around. The ghosts don't move from location to location. They seem to haunt that one particular building, and that's where they choose to stay. So it seems to be the buildings that the ghosts are affiliated with there.
So they have an attachment to those buildings.
Correct.
Then, what I'm curious about, it's been around since the 1700s, and obviously people lived there long before that, the Native Americans. Is there any type of Native American ghost, Native American spirituality? Because I know that there's quite a few there.
In Old Town Albuquerque itself, one of the requirements for the Spanish, when they were establishing a villa, there were a few rules that had to be followed. Number one, it could not be built on any existing, Native American settlement, be it a pueblo or anything. They had to have a minimum of 12 families willing to live there. So there were other requirements. So I think that's probably one of the most common questions we get, is people ask us, well, have you guys ever found any artifacts or any pottery or any Native American, historical objects? And in the historic Old Town area, no, although people have lived in the general area for thousands of years, and many of the different Native American pueblos and tribes, they have their own stories of shapeshifters and skinwalkers and, some legends and stories as well. But no actual Native American ghost stories right in historic Old Town.
What I noticed on your website, which is toursofOldTown.com for the listeners, there's a lot of neat pictures on there of your tours, of your guests. And I would imagine it's tour guides telling stories and explaining what's going on, where they're at. And it looks really interesting, and especially pictures. I think you have some orbs or some flashing lights or things that you've captured.
There are so many unusual photographs. That is the most common thing that we get during the tour. Like I said, people expect to see a ghost, but we always, we do a disclaimer at the start of our tour. We always let people know that the tour is taken at their own risk. You never know what will happen. While a full-on apparition or something is rare, people have reported being touched, feeling like hair or something brush against their arm, hear a whisper in their ear, feel something kind of touch them on their shoulder. So they do experience those things, but the most common thing is unusual photographs. There's a few spots in particular in Old Town that we just get lots of unusual photographs, whether it's orbs, and believers will tell you that orbs are ghosts or human spirits. Skeptics will tell you, it's dust or it's lens flare or it's a bug. But there are a couple places that we do get orbs, that don't have diffraction rings. Sometimes they're in color. Sometimes they're pretty hard to explain.
Have you ever had any guests that just got so scared that they couldn't finish the tour, or they were really surprised or something happened?
Yeah, we've had that doesn't happen often. I always tell people, if you see something, stay calm. The last thing we want is for someone to see something or think they see something and, run, get scared, panic. That's the worst thing you can do. You need to remain calm, take lots of photos. But yes, we have had people leave the tour either because they're feeling uncomfortable. A few people who say that they're sensitive to those sort of things. They report that they've had difficulty breathing, that they just felt uneasy. Older children who you think, have seen the ghost hunting shows and things, 13, 14-year-olds, teenagers getting scared, crying. That's not often, but occasionally we will. If a person is very sensitive, they will get a little bit freaked out.
Sometimes their imagination would run away with them too.
Correct.
Imagine things, but you all have actually seen things move.
Things have moved. We've seen chairs move. We have videos that people have shown us or that have taken on the tour. And then right afterwards, you're looking at the video on the screen and you're like, wait a minute, this chair moved from, 4 inches to 6 inches. The orbs show movement. Images in the windows show movement. So, you never know. It's a photos, when you have just one photo, it's interesting, but it's pretty tough to use it as concrete evidence. Generally without any energy readings, temperature readings, other things that might be going on. One photo is interesting, but we can't use it as conclusive proof. But we get tons of really cool looking photos, and people are always really excited and they love sending them in. And a lot of people, of course, always see faces, 3-dot phenomenon. Whenever they put the 3 dots together, they think they see a human face. And I can see it a lot of times. I see what they see in the picture. I don't know what it is or what caused it. And there's always the possibility, of the supernatural. But uncommon photos, unusual photos happen quite often.
I guess people can make up their own mind. I encourage them to check out your website and check out those photos. They're very interesting, and they can take a look at them, make up their own mind.
So, and that's totally it with our tours. We do not attempt to tell people what they should think or believe. So a lot of times at the start of the tour, I ask people how many people believe in ghosts. And then, okay, how many of you don't? And sometimes the skeptics are a little shy. And I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to believe. I am not here to convince you, that ghosts exist. Again, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of history, going to tell you the ghost stories. I'm going to show you the evidence. And then you can decide for yourself the possibility of the existence of the paranormal. I will tell you, though, that a total skeptic, someone who doesn't believe at all, it usually only takes one weird experience to turn a skeptic into a believer.
Yeah, that's how I turned into a believer. You just see one thing really, really odd that just gets to you. And I'm thinking it's probably the biggest guy and the guy with the biggest mouth that gets scared and runs off.
Well, it is interesting. First and foremost, we are a tour business. We are an entertainment business. In the last 17 years, we've worked with a variety of ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, with all different methods, all different theories. I'm open to all of those. We're open to all of those. Anything that the scientific ghost hunters are using, that's great. We've also worked with psychics, things as well, and that's great too. I know a lot of my scientific ghost hunting friends, they tell me, well, you can't use the paranormal to prove the paranormal, right? So you can't use a psychic because no one's been ever able to prove a psychic is real. But I'll tell you, we have had psychics take our tour who've never been to Albuquerque, never been to Old Town. And it's just interesting that I don't even have to say anything. Maybe I'm taking them on a historical tour during the day. How they pick up things in the exact same location where we get reported ghost sightings and ghost stories. So, we work with all of them, scientific, spiritual, and again, it's up to some people don't believe at all, and that's just fine as well. It's good entertainment for the entire family, whether they believe or not.
And speaking of entertainment, you've appeared on several other paranormal shows. You've been featured on the Dead Files. Your restaurant was featured on the Dead Files. You were on Weird Travels on the Travel Channel, and you've also been on Coast to Coast.
Coast to Coast. So an episode of Dead Files up in St. James Hotel, another historic hotel a little bit to the north. We've been on a few shows, and it's fantastic. We're happy to bring some people and notice down to Old Town to have people come visit. Haunted restaurants, there's quite a few of them. And, they say the places that were very active in life are very active in death. The energy stays out there. So restaurants where there's a lot of hustle and bustle and energy going on, they're notorious for being haunted. And we have about 12 restaurants in Old Town, and all of them report activity of some sort.
What was the name of your restaurant that you were featured in?
It's a restaurant there in historic Old Town. It's not mine, but it's when we go there. It's called the High Noon Restaurant and Saloon.
Okay.
Historic building, its property deed dates back to the 1700s. The Villa family, they've had some very unusual experiences inside there. And it's a great restaurant, too. It's fantastic. It's kind of a Southwestern steakhouse. Also, the best margaritas in Old Town. And yeah, the owner there, she felt an uneasy presence. She'd be in pain also when she'd go in. She could be fine, and she'd go into work, and her back would start hurting. People reported smelling smoke coming from fireplaces that haven't been used in decades. They hear spurs walking across the floor. Women in the bathroom, their bottoms get pinched.
So they've been touched.
They've been touched, and the hostesses in the front room report seeing a woman, walking by, looking at them. So there's been a lot of different activity in the building.
The guests have reported things as well, the people dining there?
Yeah, well, that's where a lot, the smell of smoke, they'll alert their wait staff. They're like, it really smells like something's burning, and it's an old adobe Spanish-style home, so it has Kiva fireplaces in the corners, things like that. So they'll go and check, and, they haven't been used in 20 years, but it smells like smoke is coming from them.
Okay.
Or they'll clearly hear the spurs, like ka-ching, 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 walking across the floor. And as soon as the sound reaches where the modern edition of the building is, the sound will stop. And so, yeah, guests report hearing things and seeing things, and as does the wait staff, the people who work there as well.
So they're pretty much limited to the old part of the building.
Correct. They do not seem to move over to the modern edition at all.
Now, when they did the Dead Files, I know that they have Steve DeShavi. He comes in and he does the investigating, and then you have Amy Allen that does the walkthrough at night. What was the conclusion? What conclusion did they come to?
Well, they picked up the ghost of a woman, a very unfortunate woman who lived there, who really just had a tough life. She had 4 of her children die at a young age in the building from different diseases, croup and malnourishment and other things. Her first husband went insane from syphilis. Before there was a cure, of course, before penicillin. And so, he cheated on her, right? Obviously. Got syphilis, went crazy, was put in an insane asylum. She later married a war hero who became kind of a tough drunk. We found a newspaper article where the judge sentenced her husband to 3 days in jail to contemplate the importance of wearing pants while walking around town.
Imagine that.
She had a tough life. And people felt her quite a bit and saw her, and that's who they felt in the building. They also felt a male presence as well. It's interesting. Albuquerque's first sheriff, marshal, sheriff, constable, whichever word you'd like to use, was also the only sheriff in the country ever to be indicted and hanged for murder. Sheriff by the name of Milton J. Yarberry. Back in cowboy days, hangings actually didn't happen that often. Lynchings were more common. But when they had a legal hanging, it was a big deal. The whole town would go out and, watch the execution take place. And they said they picked up his spirit as well. Very angry, very mean, very gruff. And he was, paraded by that location on the way to his execution. And he was actually, his hanging was pretty unique in that they had a new hanging contraption that had been published in the Scientific American magazine, that instead of having the trap door that the person would drop through, right, and break their neck, they instead had a rope that went up over a pulley attached to a counterweight. And the counterweight would drop and it would jerk you up really quick and break your neck. And actually the phrase they used was, with this new hanging system, was that you were being jerked to Jesus. And and Milton J. Yarberry had put on so much weight when he was in jail. I mean, again, a hanging was a big deal. They order a rope and they stretch the rope. They spend several months getting the rope ready. He put on 60 pounds while he was awaiting his execution. And so when the time came, the rope was so tight around his neck. When they cut him down, they couldn't get the rope off. So the rope was cut and he was actually buried with the noose still around his neck.
So, well, even during embalming, they couldn't get it off.
Correct.
He's stuck there. He's stuck that way for all eternity.
For all
in
eternity.
His death state.
And so that's one of the, evil sort of bad spirits that they pick up there.
And Julie, have you ever experienced anything yourself?
Yeah, my family, my grandmother, I was probably about 9 years old when my grandmother passed away. She lived with us. I was named after her. And the very next day after she died, I came home from school and I saw her walk out of her bedroom into the living room, and we looked at each other and we made eye contact, and she kind of turned into this glowing mist and disappeared. At the time of the sighting, I was fine. But after she disappeared and was gone, then I was really scared and upset and, cried and called my family. And, I was 9 years old. And so, what do you think they said to me when I told them about it?
Probably thought you were dreaming.
They said, oh, you know what? You're just sad. You miss her. Yeah. It's just your imagination. It turns out that family members, when they pass, that is the most common type of haunt that people experience, as family members. And the interesting thing about family member hauntings is you can move. You can move across country, out of the country, and some people will still experience, their family member coming to visit them. I just had the one with my grandmother. And then I had a pretty interesting thing happen in Old Town where psychics say that I have two ghosts following my tour around. They say I have the ghost of Amos James and his brother, who is nicknamed Boots. So Boots and Amos supposedly follow our ghost tour around, that they had served together in the Civil War and died out in Albuquerque. Many people don't realize the Civil War, came as far west as Albuquerque. We had the Battle of Albuquerque, the Skirmish of Albuquerque. Both took place right in historic Old Town. And, soldiers did die nearby. And supposedly Boots and Amos follow our tour around. The only thing that's interesting with that is I had an incident. Well, there's a psychic who works in Old Town who, as she's giving you a psychic reading, she'll be drawing your guardian angel. And the interesting thing about this is after your psychic reading, you take your sketch home and people will see it and they'll recognize the person in the sketch. They'll be like, oh my gosh, that's your great grandma Betty, or that's your Uncle Bob, but they'll actually recognize the person. And so I've been doing the tours, and I'd had a couple different psychics tell me that Boots and Amos, were following the tour around. And we're going to go back, about 20 years. When I was a teenager, I lived overseas, and I was living in France, and I was about 17 years old. I'm coming home really late at night, and this car pulls up, and a guy tries to abduct me. He tries to grab me and pull me, into his car. Mm-hmm. And I'm kicking and I'm screaming and I totally just lose it. And a guy runs out of his house and runs across this little patch of woods and pulls me away from the bad guy. The bad guy gets in his car and takes off. The guy who ran out and saved me, he's like, do you want me to walk you home? And I'm like, yes, please. And he does. But when we get home, he wants to talk to my dad, and tell my dad what happened.
Yeah.
And it's about 2 a.m. It's pretty late, for a 17-year-old girl to be coming home. But I woke my dad up. They spoke for a moment, and the next day we went to give him a proper thanks. We went and bought a little plant and, went to go tell him thank you. And we knocked on the door that he had come running out of the night before, and a little old lady opened the door. And we said, oh, hi, is your son home or your grandson? And she looked at us a little confused, and she says, she goes, no, I live here alone. And we said, no, last night, a man ran out and helped me. And again, she shook her head, and she's like, no one's been here but me. So I asked at the house next door, both on either side. No one had any idea who this man was who ran out and helped me. And I had never seen him before, and I never saw him again until the psychic in Old Town drew me a photo, a sketching of my guardian angel.
And it was this man.
It was Amos. When she gave it to me, I gasped, and I said, I know him. He saved me. And she says, I know you do. She goes, well, that's your guardian angel, and he's been with you your whole life. So Amos James is my guardian angel, and he likes to follow the tour around.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very and this lady's there all the time drawing these guardian angels.
Quite often, yeah. Her name is Jo Casper. She does phone readings and other readings as well, and she's great fun. And it's funny. I tell the story sometimes on the tour, but even sitting right here telling it, it still gives me goosebumps.
Yes, imagine. And your angel, he talked to your father.
Yeah, and I remember after the reading, and I got the sketch, I called my dad, and I'm like, Dad, do you remember that night? He's like, yeah, he remembered the evening. And I said, do you remember the guy? And he's like, vaguely. And I asked him to describe what he remembered, and, it matches the description. Long dark hair, brown eyes, he had a long brown coat on. And so my dad remembers it as well, and he finds it very interesting. My dad's also a skeptic, but when he did see the sketch a few years ago, he did say, yep, that sketch does look like him.
I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah, it's a neat thing, and it's one of those things, a little bit different aspect, the guardian angel from the ghost, from what Joanne, she does angel readings. This psychic is what she does. And, she says that all of us have a guardian angel, and she says that we select our own at the time of our birth. So if that's true, you have one out there too.
So that's interesting, because I guess if you select this person, you must know them, or maybe you knew them in a previous life.
Could be.
Because I would imagine you just don't select angels at random.
I don't know. They could be, they could be family members, or you're just like, wow, I like his hat. He'll be.
You liked his coat because he looked like Castile from Supernatural. That's what you're describing. The
That's
brown
right.
hair and the long coat. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, and those have been my experiences. I've had guides have a few experiences in Old Town. The same thing. They report seeing things, feeling things. Like we have a big picture window that we stand in front of, and there's been activity inside the window. And so the guests are all pressed up close to the window. The tour guide's standing behind them, and he's quite tall. He's like 6'4", 6'5". And he clearly sees in the window the image of a girl walking between him and the group. When he looks in front of him, there is nobody there. But in the window, he sees her as she walks by.
The reflection.
Yep, in the reflection. The tour guides have reported a lot of shadow people, more people that you see out of your peripheral side vision,
Yes.
as they're going into a spot first. We go through first just to make sure before we take our guests back there, before any normal stuff, if there's no bums, no drunks, no panhandlers, no one making out,
Yeah, I understand.
that it's okay to take our guests back there.
Because it's a family tour.
That's right. It's a family tour. And so, but they'll go in and they'll see things. They'll see movement, the shadow people out of the corner of their eyes quite often. Another interesting thing is after the tour moves on. So, we cover normally about 9 locations during our tour. We're in one spot for about 10 minutes, then we move on to the next one. People used to do something called ghost patrol. The ghost hunters would come down there and they'd kind of follow the tour around. And when the tour was at a location, really they wouldn't get very much. But then the tour would move away, and once the tour group was gone, they'd get all kinds of activity. They'd get energy readings, they'd get photos, they'd get lights going on and off, they'd get batteries draining. Something that it almost seems like, they know when the tour is there, and they're kind of quiet. As soon as the tour leaves, then they become active again. And that's just an interesting side note. After the tour moves away, things will happen.
Well, yeah, they don't want to, I guess they're being disturbed and they don't want to perform on demand, I guess.
They don't want to perform on demand, I guess.
Well, I can see that because that's kind of where they live. You're going through their house.
Correct.
They're going through their area, so I guess they feel, disturbed. They might feel violated. They might feel disrespected.
We try to make sure that we keep things on an even keel. I've watched a lot of ghost hunting shows recently where people seem to get a kick out of taunting or, saying bad things to try and raise a reaction out of a spirit. I don't care if you're alive or dead. No one wants to be taunted.
And I'd imagine, you don't want something following you home, something
Correct.
Getting angry at you and following you home.
And that's something that people always ask me, are the ghosts going to follow me home? And, it seems in my experience that ghosts haunt people, places, or things. They're kind of like nouns in that way. People being the most common. Like I said, usually it's family members. Things being the least common. People report they go to a garage sale and buy this cool antique table. They bring it home. Weird things start happening. They get rid of the table and the weird things go with it. Like I said, in Old Town, it seems to actually be the location. The ghosts are affiliated with the buildings that they haunt. They don't want to be anywhere else. They seem to just stay right there. There's only one ghost in Old Town that moves around a little bit, and that's the ghost of a Confederate soldier. And people have reported seeing him on foot, but more interesting, on horseback. And they report hearing the horse and seeing him in a few different sections in Old Town. And he's the only one of the ghosts that actually moves around a little bit, him and his horse.
Also, there have been a lot of, like I said, a lot of battles there, a lot of violence that's happened there, a lot of deaths caused by violence. Do you all ever hear anything like the sounds of battle, the sounds of gunfire, shouting, anything like that?
Not that isn't real. No,
well, it's here downtown, yes.
No, Old Town, it's a historic area. It's very safe. People always ask me, oh, is it safe down there? We are very close to the downtown area. Downtown, like any, downtown area, at night sometimes can be a bit of a problem. But Old Town being a historic area, the police frequent it quite often. They have police on horseback and undercover police. It's a very safe area. I'm down there often, 2, 3 in the morning, and I always have felt comfortable down there over the last 17 years.
Oh, okay. So you've never had any instances where something's happened, or anything bad happening to your guests or any of your employees?
No, I mean, occasionally, I think anywhere, occasionally we'll have someone who's had a bit too much of the other spirits come and, and try and heckle us. But, our guides are professionals. We know how to kind of handle those situations and get those people to continue moving on their way. And, it happens. Or people trying to sell, their wares, maybe jewelry that they've made or other things. But most of the time in Old Town, the area, it's secure. They want tourists to come and visit. Because today, it originally, was the church and homes. Later it became shops, and now it's a historic district. The church is still there and active, but there's about 100 specialty shops. There's 12 restaurants, there's 5 museums, all right in this 3-block by 5-block area. So it really is the heart of Albuquerque, and it's a great place for people to visit on foot. Just walk around, enjoy the afternoon.
Yeah, and I'd encourage everybody to try that out. And I know next time I'm in Albuquerque, I'll definitely be paying you all a visit and taking the family on your ghost tour.
Oh, I hope so.
It should be very interesting. I've never been on a ghost tour, but there's always a first time.
Really? You've never been on a ghost tour?
I have never been on a ghost tour.
Well, they are a lot of fun, and they are varied, depending on where you go in the country. Sometimes people are in full costume, they dress up in costume. So some people are funny, some people are more theatrical. Ours, are good-natured. We have our Ghosty t-shirts that our tour guides wear. And most of our guides, some of them have been with me for 9 years, 5 years, 4 years. So they've been doing this for a long time. And they just love showing people all of Old Town secrets and telling them all of the ghost stories.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks, and we look forward to that. And Julie, thank you for being with us on our show today, giving us an insight of Albuquerque and the history and the ghosts there and your tour business. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time, and I hope that everyone will come down to historic Old Town Albuquerque and check out history and ghost tours of Old Town.
Well, thank you very much. And everybody, we've been listening to our interview with Julie Brown, known as the Ghost Lady, General Manager and tour guide of history of ghost tours of Old Town, New Mexico. And thank you for being with us again. I'm your host, Dave Dominguez. This is the Event Horizon Show. And if you care to leave us a message, you can reach the Event Horizon Show at eventhorizonshow@gmail.com. And you can find all our shows on the ParanormalChronicles.com. Thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you later.
Well, we've heard it for a long time now about the history behind many spots around Old Town. That also involves an interesting past, which may have left a little something behind.
Some say that something are ghosts, and there's a whole tour devoted to showing people where they are at. News 13's Dave Romero is alive with the organizers of the history and ghost tours of Old Town. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Kristen, Adam, everybody at home. News 13's own resident ghost is over here lurking around Old Town. Finding my own haunts here and then hearing about the haunts is what it's all about if you come to Old Town. This is the group that's going to lead you through it and educate you. From my left to my right, we have Nancy, we have Julia, we have Charlie, we have Craig. They comprise the group of the Old Town Ghost Tours. Julia, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having us this morning.
You got it. So guys, take a look at a little bit of look at some video on your screen right there. You can see some still shots, but what do folks see when they come out to the tour?
The Ghost Tour is an outdoor walking tour where we tell you a little bit of the history and the mystery of the 310 years worth of people who have died around the Old Town Plaza.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and these are the folks that tell you the stories along the way. Charlie, what do you inform folks about?
Well, what we do is we take our folks on a lantern-lit tour all over Old Town, in front of buildings, behind buildings, and down darkened alleys, and giving folks the history and the mystery of those who have been brutally murdered all those years ago and not so many years ago.
Wow. Wow. Craig, talk about your part in all this.
Well, we do history tours during the day and talk all about the history, and at night we talk about the people who lived here, died here, and may still be here.
You know what? This is the guy I want to go on the tour with, because I got a feeling, even in the interim, that, Craig was talking, he's kind of the more animated here. I mean, they're all animated, but this guy's funny. Anyway, Nancy, let's talk about your part.
My favorite product that we have is actually a junior ghost hunting spook troop. You can come out on the weekends at 6 p.m. It's geared especially for your children. They not only get to walk and hear the stories, they get special ghost hunting equipment.
What's the craziest story that you guys have from here on the tour?
Oh, there are so many crazy stories. Probably the hatchet lady would be the scariest one. Of course, a lover murdered her fiance with a hatchet.
Well, lucky I didn't date her. So anyway, and you guys have another cool part about the tours is you have something else new.
We also have our haunted pub crawl, which is a toast to ghosts. We go to the different bars, have spirits with spirits. Charlie leads that tour, but you get the ghost story, and then you end each location with a toast to the ghost that has made that location their eternal home.
I'm sure the ghost appreciates that. And again, we would appreciate it if you would take the time to have a designated driver and do that responsibly if you're going to do that. But you guys have an incentive for the designated driver.
We do. We give
right?
a free gift for all designated drivers. Don't drink and drive.
There you go, folks. So again, the Old Town Ghost Tours and the history of everything in this great part of Albuquerque. We're going to have so much more coming up next hour. Please stick around for that. We'll send it back to you guys.
It's intense, but I'm sure it'll be fun for families, you know, to kind of get a good idea of what went on there. According to the group's website, the tours take place nightly at 8 o'clock.
And to hear more about the tours, we'll be going back out live to David. That's coming up later in the show at about 8:30.
You are listening to the Paranormal Chronicles Network. Please remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Visit theparanormalchronicles.com for paranormal news, reports, pictures, audio, and video content. Find us on Facebook at The Paranormal Chronicles. Together, we explore the unknown.
Serendipity Jewelry is beautiful handmade jewelry by a Native American artist. Treat yourself or a loved one to earrings, bracelets, and necklaces. All items are lovingly crafted using real natural crystals and materials. Join us on Facebook at Serendipity Jewelry and message us for further information, to browse our items, or for beautiful handcrafted gifts. Serendipity Jewelry. Spiritual beauty for you.
Do you believe in ghosts? A Most Haunted House is the true best-selling paranormal account that has chilled the world. Available on Kindle, on Audible, and in paperbook. Dare you read? Dare you step inside a most haunted house?
The Paranormal Chronicles.